Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to answer a question that I got the other day. I had someone ask me in the comments, Jason, I know people out there are guys who train really hard, have no concept of training programming, and a lot of times their programming actually looks pretty bad or non-existent, and yet they still make pretty good gains. They're still jacked, they're still strong. How does this work? And if that works, why do we even care about programming so much? And that's a great question. It's a phenomenal question. Because the question becomes, from a gains perspective, can you out train or outwork bad programming? And the answer is yes. All right. Now, there's problems with it. Number one, it's not going to be optimal. Number two, your injury risk is going to be a lot higher. Tremendously higher. But you'll still make gains. What do we mean by this, and why doesn't it seem to work for everyone? Because, number one, people's idea of what hard work is really varies. You'll see lots of guys who don't make gains, and what's their idea of hard work? They're like, dude, I do triple drop sets and run the rack on dumbbell curls and have my partner help me do force reps on curls to failure, right? I bench press and do a couple force reps at the end, right? That's how hard I'm training. But then you watch what they do. All right, first of all, curls aren't hard. All right, there is no amount of work you can do on curls that is going to equal particularly hard work. It will be for the bicep. But how big is the bicep in the grand scheme of things? It's a small muscle. All right? The bicep is a very small muscle relative to most of the other muscles in your body. So if that's where you're putting your efforts in that regard, you're not going to get that big. Your arms will grow a bit. But even then, there's a limited amount of size you can get in your biceps just from doing curls, right? They really need to be combined with bigger movements. And then you look at those same guys, and what do they do for bigger movements? They don't do any real work. How many of them are doing really heavy strict pen leg rows, heavy weighted pull-ups, heavy weighted chin-ups, stuff like that to go with all those curls? Probably not. They probably do some lat pull downs, and they probably just cheat and flop around on their lat pull downs. But because they cheat and flop around, they think they're working hard. Same thing with the benching. Oh, well, it's really hard because you're having your partner help you do the last couple of reps. All right. What's your bench look like? Do you even know how to bench? You'll see these guys, they're not tight on the bench. Right? They're not set in tight. Don't have good scapular retraction. They're not dug in, so they're not using their chest that much out of the bottom compared to what they could. So even though they might be working hard, a lot of these guys who do that and they think they're training their chest hard on the bench, they still have a completely flat chest. Because they're not even working their chest that much. We're not even getting over into specificity of training for strength, because we could talk about that. How about the guys who just come in and squat, bench, deadlift and do a little bit of upper back work and do tons of it? A lot of those guys make pretty good strength gains, don't they? They have a higher injury risk. They get hurt a lot easier. It's the guys who are always complaining about their knee or their hamstring or their elbow or their shoulder. But I know guys out there who squat 500 pounds who do that. So we kind of ask that question of guys who think you're working hard. Well, really, then how come I know guys who don't know anything about programming? They don't program, and they build a 500 squat just doing shitloads of squats. They exist. I have friends like that. And because they get to a 500 squat doing it and feel like there's no need to do anything else, well, you got to ask, how hard are you working on squats to just use squats and deadlifts to get to a 500 squat? How hard are they actually working compared to how hard you think hard work is? All right, that's the difference. A lot of guys, they get on some of these squats and they think just because they hit a grindy rep that's it. You better watch the way some of these guys who do just that and do a few lifts, look how much work they do. Guys I know who do that sort of stuff do like 10 limit sets of squats every week, and I'm talking hard sets where they're having to grind the very last rep or they get stapled. and then they deadlift afterwards. Okay? They're working hard, and they get results. But talking about the other thing with the hypertrophy, a lot of these kids who come in and think they train hard, they're really not. Like, they're not training their whole body. They're training a couple of small muscles really hard. But when it comes to anything else, they're not, because it's a lot more work. It's not that hard to do 15 sets of drop sets on curls. It really isn't that hard. Compare that to doing one limit set on deficit deadlifts or snatch grip deadlifts or something. Like, you compare that. Do a really heavy all-out set of snatch grip deadlifts with like your 5 or 6 rep max. And compare that with 15 sets of drop sets of curls. They're not even close. There's a reason these guys are not getting big. They think they're training hard, but they're not. They're just straining and grunting on one or two small muscles. And if they do any big movements, they're trying to almost avoid using any muscles, right? Guys just bench with their delts. They don't do any back work. No real back work. They don't train their legs. And then they're not big. They're not thick. They have a little pack. They have usually delts and some arms. But they're not big, and they're not strong. But there are guys who do. Now let's talk about some of the guys who don't know how to program, who get jacked. Watch how some of those guys train. They know nothing about programming. They might even do a bro split. I mean, I've known dudes who come in and do 3-day-a-week bro splits who are jacked as hell. And I've known guys like that. I've met at least one who used to train at a gym regularly with one dude. He was one of the most jacked dudes I've had known at the time. Probably in terms of physique and just being jacked, the dude was the most jacked dude I knew at the time. Many years ago. He trained like 3 days a week on literally a 3-day body part split. But how did he train? He'd come in and put 405 on a barbell and squat it to failure with pause squats. He'd do like 3 sets to failure. I'm talking till he gets stapled in the safeties. Right? He'd do pause work, and then when he'd get to a rep where he couldn't get back up, he'd set it on the pins. And then sometimes he'd come in and just drive it off the pins for the first set again. For the first rep in a set. Dude would come in and do all-out sets of like incline bench. Paused to failure. And it wasn't 135 on the bar. Dude would be repping out 225, 275. Do like 3 sets to failure. And get a spotter because they'd have to help him. Right? He did just everything to failure. And he always started with big barbell movements. It was like pause squats. Paused incline benching. Dead hang pull-ups and chin-ups. Right? That's how he would start his workout. So, I mean, that guy who I knew like that, who used to do that, yeah, that's how he trained. He would do 3 all-out sets of incline bench to failure. Then he'd do like some dumbbell presses, like 3 all-out sets to failure. And he'd do like 3 sets of skull crushers to failure. And then a bunch of lateral raises. His leg days were, again, he would do pause squats to failure. With like 405. No belt. Then he'd go over and do machine work to failure. Same thing. He'd have like a back day. He'd come in and do weighted pull-ups, weighted chin-ups. Straight up dead hang to failure every time. And he'd do like Romanian deadlifts and stuff. Same thing. Do load up about 365 and do 3 all-out sets. Right? Then he'd do bicep work, and then he'd do hamstrings and stuff. And that's how he trained. And, you know, his workouts were maybe an hour. But he went all out. And he got jacked. Dude was jacked. The problem we have is we don't get optimal growth from a lot of this. This is our issue. We don't get optimal growth. because we're not programming optimally. We don't get optimal strength, and we have a higher injury rate. Proper training programming should prevent inflammation and reduce injuries. Hard work will get you jacked and strong without even programming, and people need to grasp that fact. If you're not getting big, you are not eating, and you are just flat out not training hard. Period. Okay? The only reason you hit stalls if you're training truly hard is because you get aches and pains or injuries. That's why. Okay, that should be the problem. That's what's preventing you from making gains if you're really and truly training hard. So if you're still small and you think you're training hard but you're not injured, you haven't hurt yourself. So that's the whole thing. You haven't hurt yourself, and that hasn't made you stall. You don't have injuries causing it. You're just flat not training hard, or you are simply not eating enough food. Okay, that's it. Training programming is there to keep us going through plateaus. It's to get that extra 10% of our gains, and it's to keep us injury free. That's the whole point. All right, guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.